Today we're going to talk about regular customer outreach. This is the idea of deciding when and how to talk to your customers on some level of regularity. Now, the process that we're moving towards here is building out some kind of communication schedule, some kind of communication calendar. And this is based on knowing a bit about your business and also a bit about the ways that your customers will tend to segment. If you have reoccurring or recurring revenue, which are customers who tend to come back around year after year, then you're going to have a different engagement strategy than you will if you have customers who come back around every decade or every 20 years, depending on the kind of business you're in. And then there's other kinds of businesses where you're always in touch with your customers because you're always doing work for them and it's very hands-on, and your strategy should be geared towards what are different ways I want to engage with them when I'm not working directly with them one-on-one. So this is going to vary a lot. What I'm going to do is build out a model based on a company like my own. So we sell software and we sell it in an annual subscription. And that means we want to engage a few times during the year just to make sure our customers are getting the most out of the platform, that they're learning new things. Maybe if we saw an insight that was useful for their business, that we could share that with them. And most importantly, we want to engage with them leading up to the renewal because we want to figure out if there's any problems before we get to renewal. And some of that engagement is very banal, where we're just trying to make sure that they have the right kind of billing contacts and that we know all the up-to-date information about their account. But some of the contact might be more about their use cases, different patterns, different analytics that we're running on what they might need or what they could get out of the platform. So there's a lot of ways you can grow this, but it all starts with having a process, having an approach, and having a schedule. Now, one way would be just to split up the year and say, on the beginning of April and then the beginning of July, beginning of October, and the beginning of January, I'll just call all my customers. I don't think this is a good idea. Not only will this not scale, but it doesn't actually take into account some of the things related to their buying cycle, when they became your customers, when you'd like to engage them, the actual natural rhythm of being part of your business. And one of the things I want to recommend to you is that this needs to be tuned to their schedule, not your schedule, right? So the customer has a one-to-one relationship with your business. And even though you have many customers, they don't all need to be on the same schedule because, frankly, they've come to your business at different times. And that's pretty obvious to a lot of people, especially people who know that they can't contact everyone on January 1st. But it's something to think about in terms of planning it out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask ChatGPT some questions as we do about what we should consider. The other thing I'd recommend in ChatGPT is to ask about some best practice. How do customer success teams and account managers work with their customers throughout the year in terms of communication? Then we're going to put together the flow as we do. What I'm going to do is run a scenario where we have two different segments of customers and think about how I would do their communication strategies a little bit differently. And then we'll feed the transcript back into ChatGPT, see what it comes up with in terms of a procedure. And if that looks good, we'll call it a day. So let's get over to the questions. Okay, so here's our question. I am recording a podcast episode targeted at regular customer outreach on an annual schedule. Can you give me 5 questions I should ask about regular customer outreach via my account management team? Ideally, these would be based on best practice. So let's see what it comes up with here. All right, and for those of you listening on audio only, I wanted to read back the question. So the first question is, are we gathering the right insights during our outreach? So ChatGPT says, why ask this? Outreach is not just about checking in. Best practices emphasize structured conversations that uncover customer goals, challenges, and changing needs. So I think this is a great way to put it. And one of the things you want to do is get a account management team that is oriented towards developing the customer relationship in a way that they're not just calling up, checking in, asking how the weather has been. And a lot of times you get a lot of insight through non-direct questions. So something that you'll want your team to think about is, hey, how's the platform going for you? Probably doesn't give you a ton of insight unless your customers happen to be really direct and have a nice list of feedback there. But talking about some of their daily patterns and activities might derive some insight for you. So hey, how many members of your team are actually using the billing apparatus? Have they been able to integrate it into your accounting system? What is the trouble? What is the friction they've seen on that process? So there may be ways to get a little more in-depth and ask a targeted question that has a bit more of a yes or no answer and allows you to ask follow-on questions. So I think that's a really good one. Number 2 is, how do we ensure every customer feels valued, not just our top accounts? We're going to talk about this with segmentation. My strategy for this is to make sure that you have an outreach strategy for every account, but you do something different for the top accounts. And that's in the segmentation process. So this way, you leave no customer behind, but you have a different approach for the top accounts. If you try and do everything for every account, you're going to run out of time and energy. If you do nothing for the bottom tier of accounts, don't be surprised when they all disappear, and then you've got a problem where you've only got your top accounts, and then eventually they start disappearing as well. So you want to have a strategy that you can apply consistently across the customer base with segmentation in the different areas. All right, number 3, how do we tie outreach conversations back to measurable outcomes? Yeah, so that's great. Trying to actually quantify the value of this. So one thing you could do, I wouldn't recommend it, is experiment and figure out the customers who had outreach versus the customers who didn't have outreach. But I would also track this along the lines of expansion and how these customers are feeling in terms of surveys and results about the platforms. So you would hope that your outreach is producing more positive experiences for the customer and at least gives them some more insight into what you're doing and how your business values them. Number 4, are we using consistent structure across the account management team? I'm all about this with segmentation, of course, but you want to have something that is the same regardless of what account manager they go to. So commercial organizations can tend to have a problem of personalization where individuals on the team say, well, I'm really good at this, or I'm the relationship builder, or I do this a little bit differently. And so you have one account rep who's playing golf with the tier 3 accounts and another account rep who doesn't even email or call the tier 1 accounts. That's not good, right? You want to figure out a way to have a consistent approach for all of them, and it's going to require some of the people who are really heavy into just talking and chewing the fat, require them to maybe cut down some of their interactions and take some of the people who are a little more short and to the point, maybe bump up their interactions a little bit. But most importantly, have an expectation of what kind of interaction is needed with some flexibility to allow the individuals to bring out some of their individual styles and preferences, but not such a wide margin that you have the situation where some customers are playing golf and other customers aren't even getting a phone call. You want to make sure that the reps are engaging consistently with the same kind of account. And then lastly, we have number 5, how do we close the loop on customer feedback from these conversations? You need to have some kind of process for this to get ingested back into the organization. I run a software company, so for us, this is a matter of getting feedback back into the product. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. Every now and then they'll have feedback for our operations team and things that we can put back into the way we operate, but really at the end of the day, they want new features and capabilities in the software. So we have a way for our whole account management team to get feedback right back into the product board, and then that gets prioritized and worked on. So our customers regularly talk about how their feedback actually does make it into the platform, and that's because we have a system for doing that. We can talk about that in a future episode, the system taking that feedback and operationalizing it into some kind of strategy for your org. A lot of it is just about making sure you have a consistent process. It can't just be a conversation that happens with no action items, but some real post-mortem process that actually takes customer feedback and puts it back into whatever it is that you're selling. In our case, it's software, but regardless, if you're selling a service, if you're selling some kind of manufactured product, you need some way to get that feedback right back in there. So this is a really good list. I love this, and what we're going to do is take this, put it back into the document, and then we're going to start working on the flow chart. What I'm going to do is segmentation. So we're going to have 2 segments of customers, and we're going to have outreach strategies that vary by the segment, and then just talk about how we're thinking about that, and then what it would take to automate that or put it in some kind of consistent process. Okay, so here is the flow we put together in Lucid Chart right here. So I want to focus on this segmentation question. So it's typical to segment your customers into more groups than just 2, but I want to keep the example simple here. So the way we're segmenting is a simple Pareto principle, which is if the customer is in the top 20% of our revenue, then they're what we would call a top tier customer. We call that tier 1 in my business, and if they're anything else, they're in the tier 2, and they get a different kind of offering. Now, like I said, you'd maybe have more segments, but what this means is a higher touch for those top revenue customers. It doesn't mean that the lower revenue customers can't be great and can't be awesome fits for your business, and in some cases, they're even better to serve if you can do it in volume. But at least for the sake of what you're targeting, your top 20% are going to require a lot of your care, if nothing else, because they are essential to the business itself. So I want to show what this flow is like and how it differs. So with the top 20%, we're going to stay a little bit more engaged. We're going to have an email for the first quarter and then a call in the second quarter. That means they're getting a mid-year phone call from their account rep, third quarter email as well. In these emails, you're thinking about things like, hey, saw this article that might be useful to you. Hey, there's a new extension feature. Something else, there's a lot of customer success literature on this that will help you figure out what to do. And by the way, when I'm mapping this out and building process, I'm not actually giving you a customer success roadmap that you should follow to a T. What I'm showing is how we build out a process, and then you should fill this in with the right kinds of customer success, account management, sales tactics that you would like to add and that come from experts. But this is the map for you to build it out. So getting back to it, so you'll have another email in the third quarter and then some kind of pre-renewal engagement. Typically the way this works, I always try to make it a lot more casual so the customer didn't, they might suspect exactly what's going on, but I would always have more of a, hey, I'm heading through town, going to be near your office this week. I'd love to just come by and buy you and the guys lunch. Could be as simple as, I bring bagels over, brought people coffee, you name it. Just an opportunity to sit in front of them and make sure that there's some confidence there in the relationship, confidence there in what they're buying, and really let them give you bad news too. Some of the best things you can get input-wise is bad news. Bad news travels fast is a rule in my company, and a reason we want that is we want the real feedback and input. And if a customer is frustrated with you 3 months before a renewal, this is a good thing to know. So you'll want to get that in person and really just know and understand it, and then figure out what you can do from there. So that's what I would encourage you to do for those top tier accounts, is really have some annual touch point where you're getting there in person. And then for the lower tier accounts, still very valuable. What we'll do is we'll skip the first quarter. We'll give them a second quarter email. Let them do their own thing for a little longer. We'll have a third quarter email, so same kind of cadence, but a little lower touch, and then a pre-renewal engagement phone call, just so you can develop that relationship. But you can do it from the comfort of your own office, and it doesn't have to take the day of traveling and the hour plus of lunch, right? So this is a slightly different approach, but same intent, is that you want them to renew. You want them to get that bad news out there. You want to develop that relationship as you go. So, and then it all leads to the question is, are they renewing? And if so, then we start the cycle again. If they don't, you should have some kind of cancellation triage process for products that are very price oriented. This can often involve offering some kind of discount for the following year. For other kinds of purchases, it's going to be more related to the way the buyers experience it and what their actual adoption of the product has been. And so this is going to vary a lot, but you're going to want to have some kind of cancellation triage process. We might talk about that on another episode, but that's either the same account management team or another team you kick it over to try and save what they can of the account. And if that can't be done, then you move it down the line and try and keep your reputation intact. So this is the flow. And what we want to do is take this same flow and then automate it. So either via some kind of script or process, take these and put them somewhere for your account management to use. Now, what we like to do is create tasks right in the CRM. So these are all tuned on the customer schedule. So the moment a customer purchases, we have all the outreach tasks scheduled throughout the year for that account manager, and they get assigned to that account manager right away. If the account gets reassigned, they get assigned to the new account manager, right? So there's all these tasks that follow along via the automation. If you can't do it via an automation, or you got a really small team, this is similar to a lot of other weeks we talk about it. This is something a virtual assistant can do very easily for you. It's something that even you individually can just add to your calendar. Look, the moment a customer signs on board, I'm going to just add these events to my calendar, and then I'm going to have that stuff pop up as I'm going through the year. The important thing is not to just leave it to chance, not to just do it, out of the pocket and hope for the best, figure, I engaged my customers enough, but really have a scheduled process to manage your customer outreach. So what we're going to do from here is try and develop the procedure. So we've got the flow chart. I'm going to take the chart, throw it back into the document, and then we're going to do the thing that we have been doing since the contract to hire episode, which is pulling out the transcript and feeding that back into ChatGPT to see if it can write up a good procedure for what we're talking about for regular customer outreach. So if it does that, then we're just going to share that final procedure, and then I'll sign off, and that'll be the show. But we might make some changes to it as well, and I can point out some things that I think might be a little less helpful in the particular procedure that they put together. All right, so I always love this part of the episode where I upload the transcript and the flowchart and see what ChatGPT can come up with in terms of the procedure. So I have the prompt here. I'm uploading the flowchart and transcript of the podcast about regular customer outreach. Based on these assets, can you generate a step-by-step procedure that I can share with the listeners? So let's see what ChatGPT comes up with. All right, so ChatGPT came up with a pretty good procedure, but one of the things it did that I didn't really like was put both the tiers in the same list, so you don't have a separate list for each one. But what it did ask is if we'd like to create a checklist, and so what I'm going to do is have it create the checklist and then split out the tiers. But it added some interesting insight here, and I think you could have it sprinkle in some more best practices around customer engagement and account management if you want to work with this for a little bit. So let's have it split it out into the checklist and see what that looks like. So my prompt is make it into a checklist and then split the tiers into 2 separate checklists so they are not mixed. All right, so this final version I really like right here, where we have the tier A annual outreach checklist, and it goes into each one and talks about some of the points you always want to have here, which are great. You know, one of the things that ChatGPT is really helpful with is because it's trained on so much data, so many documents, it actually can pull out a lot of best practices for you that you don't even know you wanted. And sometimes it can pull out bad things too, so you want to definitely check to make sure things make sense, but a lot of times it's pulling from account management and customer success literature here to get these insights. And then the tier B customers, this is the outreach checklist for them. So these both look really good. What I'm going to do is copy these into the document, and then that's going to be the final shareable document for this episode. So really appreciate you if you've been listening to the show and gotten this far, and hopefully this helps you better engage with your customers. If you want to learn more about the show, the Substack is the best option. So it's buildingprocess.substack.com, and check out Building Process on YouTube. That's if you want the screencast visual version, but if you still like listening via audio, then it'll come in your podcast feed via Substack. So thank you for all your support so far, and please send feedback my way either via Substack or YouTube.